Hi guys, this is Max here, back again with hopefully another great political video. And I feel very sorry, but I have to confess to all of you guys that last week, or not last week, 2 days ago actually, I made one very rushed video about a 2022 US gubernatorial prediction. And because it was so rushed, because it was so poorly detailed, I am now going to make a much better video directly addressing every single race and how it goes down. And I assume we'd get straight to it. Now, this map here shows us which Republican and which Democratic governors are retiring. There are 3 for the Democrats: Oregon, Hawaii, Pennsylvania, and 5 for the Republicans: Arizona, Nebraska, Arkansas, Maryland, and Massachusetts. Now, Maryland and Massachusetts are very interesting because we have 2 Republican governors in very blue states retiring. Which means that even though 2022, in my opinion, and I think that's the opinion of most political pundits, will be a Republican wave year, the Democrats definitely have a pretty good chance at picking up these 2 very left-wing states. And therefore, it is probably best to first take a look at, well, who are the Republican candidates in those, and whether they might actually be able to hold it. Now, for the Republicans, Geoff Diehl, a state representative, is the only one who has his own Wikipedia page, so I assume he's probably going to win. And he also has the Trump endorsement. He was originally supposed to be a primary challenger to Charlie Baker, but yeah, he declined to run. Let's see if he was shown to be behind in the polls. And yeah, in fact, he was behind in the polls. I mean, it really does not occur to me why in the state like Massachusetts you'd oust an incumbent governor if he's a Republican and run a more Trumpy candidate, because obviously Massachusetts is not a Trumpy state. But of course, the will of the base of the Republican base is sometimes a bit extreme, and there's nothing wrong with that. They have their right to make their choices, and I think that guy's going to be the nominee. Whether he'll win the general election, well, that's a different story. On the Democratic side, we got a bunch of people who'd really like to take Baker's place. There are 2, is a state representative and a state senator running. And if they don't make anything terribly, well, disastrous, and if the Republican does not run a really good campaign, I honestly don't see a way how Massachusetts wouldn't flip to the Democrats. But, after all, it has elected a Republican governor by a pretty ridiculous margin in 2018, that being Charlie Baker, and actually by a quite substantial margin if we check that out. Baker won by over 33%. That's impressive. Now, the other blue state Republican retiring is Larry Hogan in Maryland. Larry Hogan actually didn't vote for Joe Biden. He voted independent or third party or something, but he certainly did not vote for Donald Trump, and it looks like that since he's term limited, his not his lieutenant governor, Daniel L. Cox, or some of these other Republicans are going to try to take his place. Now, again, Maryland is a very blue state, but it has a history of sometimes electing moderate Republicans. And as of right now, it looks like the Republicans will go with who's that guy? Boy Rutherford. Who's Boy Rutherford? Boy Rutherford. The lieutenant governor, yeah. So if the lieutenant governor runs, he has the biggest chance of winning because he could associate himself with the decently popular Hogan administration that was elected by a margin of 10 points in 2018. Now, yeah, but Daniel Cox has a Trump endorsement. However, he's not ahead in the polls. The Trump endorsement in some states like Maryland, for example, doesn't mean all that much, actually, even though this Republican primary poll was in fact conducted by a Democratic internal, so take this with a grain of salt. For the Democrats, there are a bunch of people who are interested in the candidacy, and Peter Franchot has the most endorsements, and I believe that he's probably going to be in a neck-to-neck race with Rusher and Baker. Baker gone in Massachusetts, Baker coming in Maryland. I know that's funny, but I do think that a general Democrat probably is going to beat a Republican. Here they got a couple of polls saying Republican like Larry Hogan versus Progressive Democrat. Yeah, that go to the Republicans. Trump like Republican versus Progressive Democrat would go to the Progressive Democrat. Republican like Larry Hogan against moderate Democrat, yeah. So the only shot that the Republicans got at holding this is if they nominate Hogan's lieutenant governor, that guy's name being, and I'll look it up again, Boyd Rutherford. Yeah, he's the only one who can win. Maybe not the only one, but he's the only one with a pretty good chance. Alright, now, other than that, I will only cover the races which I believe have a pretty good chance of flipping. And of course the ones where I believe that the incumbent governor will be ousted through a primary challenge. And the only one where I can see that happening as right now, okay, the only two ones where I can see that happening are Ohio and Georgia. Two not completely safe Republican states, but both with a Republican history, even though Georgia voted for the Democrat for president and for 2 Democratic senators in 2020, it still very much is a competitive state, and I do not believe that the Democrats got Georgia in the bag, especially not in a red wave year like 2022. Now, in Ohio, Mike DeWine is facing a primary challenge from a U.S. representative, Jim Renacci, and Renacci is leading in the polls. He's a pretty far-right guy. I think he went on Red Eagle Politics, but being the grifter he is, Red Eagle Politics only publicized that interview to people who donate to his fundraising machine. By the way, if I ever establish something like this for fundraising, I swear to all of you, I will not allow students to donate. Students need their money more than I do. And I will also not keep content away from people who just view this channel without contributing. I mean, if you want to contribute, that is very nice, but I want all people to get my message, and not just a select few of them. Alright then. However, apart from this, I do think Jim Renacci is going to win the primary, and I also think he'll win the general election. A few years ago, this might have been different, but with Ohio trending so far to the right, I really don't see a way how the Republicans are going to lose it. In Georgia, this is a different thing, though. The question is, will Brian Kemp lose the primary, and if he loses, whom will he lose it to? I mean, if he loses against a less well-known Trumpian Republican, that guy probably won't win in the general election. But if he loses against David Perdue, a former U.S. Senator who many Republicans refused to turn out and vote for because he wasn't too tough on the election, even though he's a very far-right senator, I should say. If he wins the primary, I think he could also win the governor's election, especially considering the fact that his cousin, Sonny Perdue, yeah, that was actually his name, Sonny Perdue, already served as governor. David Perdue's cousin, Sonny, served as governor. Sounds pretty weird, but that's still cool. Now, I do think that David Perdue will get the Trump endorsement. Lots of Republicans online are pretty excited about him, and of course that's not entirely reflective of a primary base, but Perdue, out of all these candidates, has the highest chance of beating Brian Kemp, even though I still think he's probably going to win the primary. I mean, it is a very vocal, but still, it is a minority of people that want to see him gone, and I also think that Kemp has the highest chances of getting reelected, especially since he already beat Stacey Abrams once. That woman basically has an ego as big as a pickup truck, and the only thing that she cares about is her own personal career. I mean, just look it up. Just look it up. She did not support progressive policies or even democratic policies in the past. She stood shoulder by shoulder with a Republican governor when it came to limiting the amount of money that would go towards student scholarships. And I'm not saying that I support or oppose this policy. Of course, I want education to go well. But this woman mostly cares about her own ego and her own desires. Now, of course, I'm not saying that Brian Kemp doesn't do the same. I mean, he is also just going with whatever the wind of the country's going. When he was criticized for being too lax on voter ID laws, what did he do? He passed a law to increase voter ID requirements. He also just cares about his own career. But so does Stacey Abrams. And considering the fact that she will probably only run on, on disenfranchisement of black voters, I don't think this will be a successful strategy. And I also don't think that is because of Stacey Abrams that Georgia is now a blue state. She just lucked out by being prominent at a time where Georgia suburbs happened to trend to the left. And if you go to Georgia and ask people of color, do you think you're being disenfranchised in a Jim Crow way? Almost all of them are going to say no. Because they're not being disenfranchised. I mean, Stop the Steal was bullshit. But voter suppression is also largely, it is largely just not true. I mean, I do not say that there aren't some laws that make it difficult to register to vote, but there are also laws that make it difficult to get a driver's license. So there's nothing inherently racist about photo ID. You even have that in Connecticut. So come on, Connecticut is not a southern segregationist state, and they also have strong voter ID laws. But anyway, I don't want to get caught up in this. I think if Brian Kemp runs against Stacey Abrams, he will win again. And in the hypothetical polling, it also shows him winning against her. I mean, he's going to win. However, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she obviously won't. And Vernon Jones, well, he won't win either. But I'm surprised to see that Greene is at 41%, though. I mean, that woman is insane. Just Google her, all right? I mean, she might be funny, but she's just crazy. No, Marjorie Taylor Greene is a disaster. Anyway, I believe Brian Kemp is going to win the primary, and he's going to beat Stacey Abrams in the general election. This is not a set thing. He could lose his primary to Purdue, and maybe Abrams pulls it off, but as right now, Kemp's the favorite. Now, this has already taken quite a long while, but I also still want to take a look at Kansas, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Texas at the very least. Now, in Kansas, we got Laura Kelly being the incumbent. Basically, the only reason why she got elected is because in 2018, a guy called Chris Kobach won the Republican primary against the incumbent governor, and he was so far to the right that even Kansas said, sorry, man, ain't gonna happen. 6.5% of the vote, mostly Republicans, also went to an independent candidate. These were basically people who said, well, we could never vote for Chris Kobach, but we also couldn't vote for a Democrat. Earlier on, I would have said that Laura Kelly might be able to hold on because she is fairly popular and quite moderate, but in a year that will probably see a Republican +6 or +10 or even +12 generic ballot, there's no way she's going to hold on in a state that Trump won by almost 15 points. And according to this hypothetical polling for a Republican primary, it looks like Derek Schmidt, what did he do again? The Attorney General of Kansas will probably win. Maybe it's also going to be, I don't know, Chase Laporte, businessman and U.S. Army veteran, but I'd rather bet my money on Derek Schmidt. He's probably going to win. And he's going to be the next governor of Kansas. In terms of the state of Wisconsin, we have a Democratic incumbent called Tony Evers. He's a Democrat. I already said that, I'm sorry. And he will probably be heading against, I don't know, let's look at it. He might be running against Rebecca Kleefisch, the former lieutenant governor. Or I don't know, man. The Republicans really got better candidates in here. I mean, where's Kevin Nicholson? Oh, here he is. Yeah, I think he might be going to win. And, well, at least he's a pretty far-right guy, but he could turn out in the Driftless area between Madison and Minneapolis in Wisconsin. Minneapolis is not in Wisconsin, but the Driftless area is between Madison and Minneapolis. And I think that Kevin Nicholson might be able to win. But no matter whom the Republicans are going to put up, Tony Evers is just not popular. I mean, look at this guy. He's not done anything significant. Not entirely his fault because the state legislature is heavily controlled by Republicans. Nonetheless, he's not going to win re-election, and the polling shows it. Tony Evers, generic Republican, he's losing against him. In that poll, he's winning, but that's Democratic Insider. I mean, just take a look at this. The Democrat Insider has Evers up by 1. The Republican Insider has him down by 1. And I'm actually surprised that Evers is doing so well in the polls. I mean, according to how much Wisconsin has trended to the right as a state and how much of a red wave year 2022 is going to be, I'm surprised that he still got any good polling numbers, but maybe I was proven wrong and Evers still's got a chance to pull this off. Either way, I think the best candidates for the Republicans would be Scott Walker, but that's not the case right now. Alright, now this video has already been going for a while, so I should say I still really want to cover all those states, but it's already been 14 minutes. Alright, now, in Michigan, it looks like Gretchen Whitmer is the incumbent. We all know that. She's got a lot of people who really hate her, and she already got a long list of people who'd like to take her job. Only one of them has got an endorsement, though, Ted Nugget. Mike Brown was endorsed by Ted Nugget. That's funny. Well, I think she's going to lose. James Craig, of course, the former Detroit police chief, has the highest chance of winning the nomination and also the best chance of beating Whitmer in a general election. He's just the best candidate, and I do think that he's going to beat her. Polling shows it to be fairly competitive, but heading towards election night, he will sneak out a tilt and very small victory. Now, I think this is it for now. We covered most of the Rust Belt and East Coast swing states today, and tomorrow I'll make another video talking about swing states in the West and how their governors are going to be elected come 2022 and who those governors are going to be. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, it was a great pleasure for me to make it, and I'll see you next time tomorrow after my next upload on the governor's elections in the United States in 2022. Have a good night. If you hated my content, I can totally understand this. I'm very tired, and I think I'm going to go to bed now. Have a good day. Max out.